John, a lot of people saw earlier today, we had an interview with legendary journalist Cy Hirsch. I don't know if there's anybody who's done more reporting on the CIA. I mean, maybe Bob Woodward. How are you today, John?
I'm doing great. Yeah, that was a major coup. I tweeted that out earlier
Thank
to
you.
share it with my Twitter audience that you and Charles had an opportunity to sit down and chat with Cy Hirsch today. What a
Yeah,
great opportunity. I mean, for those of you who don't know who he is and why he's legendary, I guess it was it 1969 or 70 or 71 that he
69.
breaks this 69 he breaks the story of the My Lai massacre,
Well, but wait a
which
minute.
was yeah.
Before that, I didn't realize this until today. Before that, he had the story. I'm pretty sure it was before that. He was telling us about this story that he broke about the CIA doing domestic surveillance on, American citizens who were opponents of the Vietnam War. And I didn't know about that. And it gets me thinking, like, how do we know that the CIA is not doing that to you and I and all the other people who come on Crowdsource the Truth right now?
I think that's what Edward Snowden lost his passport over, was he told you that no, that's exactly what they're doing and that's what PRISM is, and that's why he's persona non grata right now. He can't come in the United States.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. But
Now,
again,
there's
I
a
think
lot of things that we want to talk. I'm sorry to interrupt you, John. There's a lot of
yeah.
things that we want to talk about. And just for people who are like, oh, Jason's interrupting, we've got a little bit of a delay. So it's kind of a challenge to have a normal conversation like this and have it appear normal. So before people jump all over me, I'm trying to get in there that we're going to go fully in depth on all of this today during our sponsor exclusive segment on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, patreon.com/I am John Cullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. I also really like to mention my new favorite, odyssey.com. It's great for so many reasons. It is a video host. It also manages memberships, so people who want to become members and access the sponsor exclusive segments, including John Cullen Investigates, coming up in less than 30 minutes, can become members on Odyssey. So, but John, this topic that you've prepared for tonight, we had before you knew about the Cy Hirsch interview.
Yeah, in fact, you and I were having a conversation this week, and it was one of these moments where I came away from the conversation and go, Jason's freaking brilliant. And
Too kind.
it was something that I hadn't really thought about. Sometimes you get too close to the story, so to speak, and this ability to pull back and look at this bigger picture, right, is something that you do very well. And we were talking privately, and you kind of introduced this notion of a continuum between tradecraft and journalism. And as I really started to consider what you were talking about, I realized this is pretty interesting. This is a pretty interesting twist. And so you kind of set me off on another one of my little walkabout type things where I got to go do some exploring and investigating. And it turns out that Harvard covered this topic about, I don't know, 2006, 2009. We'll look at the Neiman reports from Harvard, and it's like you read their mind without knowing it. Kind of like we've done this before, where we cover something, then we find out, oh yeah, 15 years ago there was an article about that none of us saw. So there's an article here from Neiman reports from Harvard saying that spies and journalists taking a look at their intersections. So that's really what we're going to do in tonight's show. We're going to look at this continuum. And I hadn't really considered it until you said it. And then when I looked in the mirror, I said, yeah, I guess I am kind of spooky, spy-ish, right? When you get
But that's the thing.
What do we
Everybody
do?
accused you of that. Remember, obviously, the famous now little exchange with Jake Morphonios, who, I mean, he's another one that we could talk about in this regard, setting aside making fun of the fact that he's an asshole. He's like, well, I just happened to get jammed up in a CIA Thailand thing, so I, speak fluent Thai. And it's like, well, yeah, that's normal. That's probably normal.
Is the A part of LGBTQ Is it lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer, and asshole? Is that part of the
Well, then Jake would
LGBTQA? Is
identify.
asshole is on the
Yeah.
end? Is you can identify as an asshole, and that kind of excuses all your behavior, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we're going to look at a number of different journalists. We're going to look at what they did, how they did it, and gee whiz, how similar is this to Tradecraft? And we're going to look at the spectrum, because at one end of the spectrum, it's not, and at the other end of the spectrum, it's like, who do these people really work for? Yeah. I mean, who are these people really working for? So that's what we're going to get into in tonight's show. And before we get too much into the cloak and dagger stuff, again, to the art department tip of the hat, I guess I'm not going to be able to wear my trench coat and fedora anymore in public, because that's I'm going to be too recognizable. Yeah, so I won't be wearing the trench coat and the fedora in public any longer. But I do have a couple things I want to share with the YouTube audience before we hop over to the patron only show. In the patron only show, we have some videos that we're going to be looking at that I think are very important on the topic. One of which has to do with Barbara Walters, and we'll look at that. So why don't we take a look at a couple slides in the deck before we go to the patron only show, and we'll show the audience what we've got here. So go ahead. What do you got there?
I was just saying, absolutely.
Yeah, so we've got, this is the Neiman reports from Harvard. And again, a number of years ago, I think it says 2009. It's too small for me to see from where I'm sitting, but 2009 or 2006. They did this piece called Spies and Journalists, taking a look at their intersections. Moscow recruited journalists for their access, insights, and confidential information. And I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the film Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence. We're going to take all right, so we're going to take a look at Red Sparrow when we go to the patron only show. We're going to take a look at the trailer for that and talk about that concept, this Red Sparrow concept, which Harvard, I don't know if they talk about it by name here in this article, but this Neiman Reports article is about this intersection between tradecraft and journalism.
Have you seen that movie, Red Sparrow?
I haven't seen the film, but I watched the trailer, and the gist of the trailer, I think, is enough for the audience to understand what the
But it's interesting,
is all about.
That this film is coming up now because, John Mark Dugan, who I haven't spoken to in a while, we spoke briefly a couple of weeks ago, but John had interviewed Maria Butina. Do you know that name?
I know the name, but I don't know anything more than I've heard you say the name a couple times. Other than I don't know who she is. She could be a ballet dancer, a flute player. I wouldn't know.
No, not a flute player. But I'm pretty sure that this movie Red Sparrow is like basically about her. Maria Butina is sort of like a genius from Russia. She went to this special school for, super genius kids and everything. And she was involved romantically with the Ginger Frankenstein, Patrick, what's his last name? Byrne. And
from Overstock. So again, you have to tell people who aren't keeping score at home. This is the former CEO of Overstock.com,
right?
Which was acquired by Amazon. Right. Yeah. So Amazon acquires Overstock. Patrick Byrne becomes a billionaire. And he's dating a Russian sniper. Is that so? That's where we're at in the story so far.
What it is she is a kind of pro Second Amendment. I mean, even though she's Russian and not American, she was here trying to do something with the NRA to create like an NRA in Russia. And I want to find out more about this relationship between her and Patrick Byrne, because for people who have been following Crowdsource the Truth for a while, look, they're at some Overstock.com event or something. But I had Patrick Byrne on the show a while ago when I thought he was a trustworthy guy, which I no longer think. And he tells this whole story about how the FBI contacted him and told him that they wanted to entrap Hillary Clinton so that when she becomes president, they could have something to dangle over her head. And then this whole bunch of business happened with Maria Butina. Basically ends up with Maria Butina getting thrown in jail and kicked out of the United States, having really a pretty terrible time when you hear her explain it, she spoke to John Mark Dugan, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just curious if Patrick Byrne had anything to do with her getting jammed up and going to jail, because that's the kind of guy that I think he is. But again, the whole thing with the NRA, she was dealing with David Keene, who was the head of the NRA and at one point was the head of the American Conservative Union. Keene's wife was indicted for embezzling maybe like $1 million or something from the charity. So there's all this stuff going on. And, Patrick Byrne somehow winds up as a hero in the alt media world, and Maria Butina gets kicked out of the country. Interestingly, she is now a member of the Russian Duma. So she's like a congressperson.
A senator. Yeah. Or
Right.
a senator. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. Oh, it'd be cool if we get her on the show. That would be a riot.
I'm working
love to
on
hear
that.
what she has to say. Yeah, I'd love to hear what she has to say. All right, let's go to the deck. Let's show the audience a couple cool things before we start digging into all this 007 stuff. So this is one of my favorite images. I grabbed this week. A couple things happened this week that I know you guys like to talk about. So this is an image of the Earth, and this is the half of the Earth that's almost entirely water.
Did anybody know that before right now? Every time we ever see it, there's always at least some continent.
Something. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit on the edges, right on the edges, there's a little bit of some islands and stuff like that. Right. Exactly. I think that's New Zealand. So, that's the Pacific. And when you look at the Earth from this perspective, you realize that, well, gee whiz, that means about half of the things that come at the Earth are hitting that. They're hitting the water.
Yeah, good point.
Half. All right. So half of the objects that are heading to, now the truth is that water comprises 77% of the surface. So what that means is statistically 77% of the objects that hit Earth randomly over time are hitting the water. And since the land only comprises 23% of the planet is dry land, that means only 23% of the objects that make it through our atmosphere hit the dirt.
You reminded me of Dennis Hopper when you said dry land. I'm the only person who likes the movie Waterworld.
Okay. I think the concept of Waterworld's pretty tight. All right, let's go to the next one, because this is something a lot of people were commenting on Twitter this week and sending me messages and sending me emails that, yes, we had a significant meteor come through Texas this week, and it went boom, and it was significant. So again, the difference between, now keep in mind, when this thing landed, they found the meteor and it's only like 2 feet across and it weighs 1,000 pounds.
Wow, that's dense.
Right. So remember the meteor that we saw when we went to Barringer Crater?
I do. Did we show that on the video? Because that was super cool. It's not big, but they let you touch it. It wasn't
that big. But the one that just came in this week weighs 1,000 pounds, and it's only like this big. It's not.
Didn't they tell
about
us
the size of 2 basketballs?
How much?
It's like 2 basketballs,
tiny,
2,000, and it's 1,000 pounds.
But even in the meteor crater place, they said this weighs like some crazy, like somehow you
4,000 or
could
5,000 pounds. Yeah.
It was just so, and they let you touch it, which no museum ever lets you touch. They're like, whatever, you can't do anything to this. Touch it all you want, lick it, do whatever.
And it's like, dude, what about the Andromeda strain? It's like this thing came from space. Didn't it bring like a virus or two from, from Capricorn or wherever it came from?
Though, on the re-entry or whatever.
Tell that to those. What are those little piggly wiggly things in the water that survive everything? Not troglodytes. What are they called?
Plankton. I don't know.
No, it's like a little water pig. It's such a strange looking thing.
Here's Dennis Hopper getting ready to suck and savor the sweet flavor of dry land.
See, for
it was
me,
a myth in Waterworld.
Dennis Hopper's defining performance was in the movie with Christian.
True Romance.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Dennis Hopper and our
Christopher Walken.
One of the best scenes ever.
And the Moors conquered Sicily. And your great
You're going to get us kicked off of YouTube. Yeah,
I'm not going to quote it. People should watch this, though. I mean, if you like David Mamet and you like actors doing scenes. Even if you hate this movie, this is one of the best scenes between two incredibly expert
Legends.
actors
It's
here.
phenomenal.
It's a great
I mean, this is
scene.
as good as anything you're going to see in The Godfather.
And
I
you know,
mean,
Tony
this scene,
Soprano is in this.
it's a good point. You're right. Gandolfini is, but he's young. He's young in this. Yeah. It's a great scene.
And he only
All right,
speaks
let's get back to our
Italian, I
content.
think.
We're going to get yelled at. The audience is going
Sorry.
to go bonkers that we're talking about movies again. But you're a film school guy. I mean, that's what we do. All right, so we had a big meteor come through. A lot of people sending me stuff on Twitter. Got a couple new followers this week on Twitter. I'm up to 8,374 followers.
Well done.
The banner in the back behind my my head up there, that is P&I deaths overlaid on top of excess deaths. All-cause mortality excess deaths and P&I deaths overlaid. And all the pundits seem to have a hard time accepting data. Now, we're going to talk about something now that I think is important. And the next slide gets into sort of this topic that I wanted to talk about this week, but we're going to talk about it next week, which is the spiral of silence. And the spiral of silence is a phenomenon that's been documented by the Ash experiments and a couple other things. We'll get into it next week. But the people that you see here are the people who have this strong sense of self-esteem. In other words, I'll give you an example. Dr. Peter McCullough went on Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people would say, dude, you can't go on Alex Jones. If you go on Alex Jones, everybody's going to think you're, that's the death knell or whatever. But Peter McCullough's like, no, screw you. I'm going on Alex Jones. I'm going to go tell Alex what I know, and I'm going on Alex Jones. The people that you see here are the people that follow me on Twitter. And to follow me on Twitter is a bold move. It's like admitting that you listened to Howard Stern back in the 1980s. It's like stepping out from the crowd and saying, I think this guy's got something to say. Well, you see a whole bunch of physicians here. You see Jimmy Dore. You see Brett Weinstein.
Dr. Lynn? I haven't heard of her. What is she a doctor?
Lynn Finn. Dr. Lynn Finn, yeah. So
these are people who
are kind of big on Twitter, who are sharing their experiences from a physician's perspective, and they're looking at the data that I'm posting, the pie charts and these bar charts, and going, if this is the CDC data and this guy's math is right, this is somewhat relevant. You can't just ignore it. And that's bold in this day and age for these physicians to follow me. I mean, you got Dr. Jay Bhattacharya up here. You got Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. These are big names. Brett Weinstein's got almost 1 million followers now.
Have these people, have you DM'd them or anything? Have they communicated with you?
I don't really DM them, but some of them I engage with. So the physicians down on the bottom row, Dr. Chris Held, Dr. Syed, Dr. Lynn Finn, I engage with them rather regularly. The Informed New Jersey nurses, I engage with rather regularly. Dr. Anastasia Maria Lupus up in the upper right, I engage with. Peter Billing shares a lot of my stuff. But the real big names are just kind of lurking. But the fact is, they have the option to follow me and keep that secret. And they've opted not to. When you have the blue check and you pay your $8 a month or whatever it is, you can follow somebody and keep that a secret.
Wow.
Yeah. And the fact that they've opted not to do that is kind of a bold move.
Well, maybe they don't know. I didn't know you could do that.
Well,
Doctors aren't
right. Tomorrow
Twitter
they'll all
experts.
hide it. Yeah, exactly. Jimmy Dore is hiding his right now. But
I don't think Jimmy Dore would care. Jimmy Dore has become...
That's why I'm saying Jimmy. That's why I'm saying Jimmy, because he's the only one here who wouldn't care. And,
really outspoken. Because he is saying, I've heard him say that he believes he's been vaccine injured and that he had some pre-existing medical condition, which is why he took it. But he's become a really vocal, outspoken,
Yeah. That's why I love Jimmy. I mean, it's very interesting because I think that Jimmy and I and a lot of Bill Maher, are a lot of people who came up, grew up thinking we were liberal, thinking we were, we're progressive, and and there were a bunch of us that were sort of fiscally conservative. So from a fiscal perspective, we wanted to be aligned with the Republicans. But the Republicans were such assholes when I was a kid growing up. It was like nobody wanted to be aligned with them in any way from a policy standpoint.
But it's not the same anymore. It's not like that anymore.
No,
I don't think these
no.
traditional things, because the Democrats all want war and corporate.
Totally, the whole thing is bizarro, and the fact that you've got guys like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham who appear to be one thing, but might be a wolf in sheep's clothing is like a whole nother aspect of the story. But again, I'm very grateful for these people who have been following me on Twitter and don't hide that fact. It's kind of like going out on a date with the ugly chick from high school and not hiding it. And I feel like the ugly chick. So thank you guys for not hiding the fact that. Yeah. All right. So what do we have here? This is a map of where people are following me on Twitter. I found one of these tools that allows you to analyze, your followers and figure out who's who. And this kind of shows you where people are following you in different parts of the world. So
somebody here in the ocean is following. 6 people floating on a raft.
Got a bunch of people in Hawaii. Looks like we got some followers in Cuba. Can't imagine why. Looks like we got a couple down in Lesotho, South Africa.
Cuba.
Yeah, isn't that exciting? So who knows what's going on? But we've got some followers all over the place.
What about China?
China. I'm sure we have some in China. Speaking of China, I found it fascinating that we have called off the search for all the things that we've shot down. So whether we shot it down over Alaska, we shot it down over Lake Huron. So here's kind of the update on that. We found nothing and we stopped looking. So, when you talk about American ingenuity, you talk about that kind of, nobody's going to beat us, boy. We throw in the towel faster than anybody when it comes to shooting down objects and finding the bits and pieces. So with that,
I found
that introduced. Oh, there you go. What did you got? What do you have?
There it is.
That's the balloon. That's the one that we shot down. This is the one over Lake Huron. China says that's not our balloon. That's not our Mickey. When we do Mickey, we do him a little different. We use poisonous ink, and it runs a little bit differently. All right, but let's go back to my deck, because speaking of China, you remember 2 weeks ago we shot this balloon down off the coast of Cape Hatteras, and I don't know if you've ever been to Cape Hatteras in February.
I don't think so.
It's not a really fun place to go fishing in February. You don't want to be boating off the coast of the Carolinas in February. It is wicked. Cape Hatteras is one of the most dangerous places on earth. Well, that's where we shot the balloon down. Oh, yeah.
Why is it?
Oh, my God. It's where the Gulf Stream, there's like a point that comes out. The Gulf Stream comes very close to the continental USA, and the Gulf Stream is a different temperature than the rest of the water. And so you get all kinds of weather, all kinds of currents, wave action, winds. It's a crazy place. One of the craziest places to navigate is Cape Hatteras. So that's where we shot it down. And what that means is there's not going to be a whole lot of guys out there fishing on the weekend in February. So when they shoot the balloon down, who's going to recover the balloon? The only guys who are prepared to go out in those seas, the Navy. Why would you not shoot it down over Iowa? Why wouldn't you shoot it down over Kansas? Why wouldn't you shoot it down over, wherever it was before it got to Cape Hatteras? Why wouldn't you shoot it down?
Wow, I did not know this. This is great knowledge, John. Cape Hatteras has been a deadly trap for sailors that have entered over the centuries. The stretch of shore is home to more than 600 shipwrecks off the shifting sandbars of Hatteras Islands. So you're suggesting, I believe, that perhaps this area was selected just because people don't hang out there, and anybody who knows anything about boats doesn't want to go there, and anybody who doesn't know anything about boats is likely to sink there.
Well, what's going to happen if you shoot it down over Kansas? How many iPhone-toting Kansas people are going to drive up and go,
on Twitter.
Golly, Martha, look what we got. We got ourselves a balloon, right? I mean, it's going to be on Facebook in minutes.
Who did exactly that the first night this came up?
Montana.
And they were like, no, that didn't happen.
Correct. That's not what you think it is. Right. That's not what you think it is. Right.
Here's the thing, John.
So that didn't happen.
We're out of time.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Did you show people the picture, though? Because this is how we know it's from China, right? You know it's from China.
We saw that. We showed
in the water, right? All right, so you know it's from China. That's how you know. That's how you know it's from China.
It's from China. But
that's why you don't ask questions. It says it's made in China. You know it's made in China.
No question.
This is right. So this is irrefutable evidence right here. So let's go to our patron-only stuff. We've got a lot of video stuff. Barbara Walters. We're going to look at this Red Sparrow, and we're going to take a look at this continuum between journalism and tradecraft. And we're going to look at the interview with Osama bin Laden, Fidel Castro. It's going to be awesome. I think you guys are going to enjoy this.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stay with us. We'll be right back on Subscribestar, Patreon, and Odyssey. See you there.